Back to the SSAS and MDX training sessions. So far we completed SSAS trainings, and now we will be starting with the MDX trainings. And we need to know a few concepts, a few basics about the MDX and analysis services before we jump into MDX complex queries and so on. First, what is MDX? MDX stands for multi-dimensional expressions. It's the querying language for querying the cubes. For example, this is your relational database. You have a cube project, and the output of that one is when you deploy and when you process it, you will get OLAP database. So, in other words, we call it as cube database. So, we use SQL Server to query our relational database if it is SQL, or if it is Oracle, we use PL/SQL and so on. We have a querying language to query the data from the database. Similarly, as I mentioned couple of times, OLAP is also a database, and we need a querying language to query the data. So the querying language for querying OLAP database is MDX, multidimensional expressions. You all know that you can browse the data without the need of writing queries. If you go here and if you right click and if you browse it, you can browse the cube and you can see the data here. But this is an analysis services project. This is a database. You cannot give this browser option for the users to browse the data and to slice and dice the data. And in most of the cases, you need to work on creating reports and dashboards for which you need to write your MDX queries to pull the data out of your analysis services database. Now let's see what is the simplest query that you can write in MDX, and what is the format, how to frame a query and so on. So to write an MDX query, first you need to open a SQL Server. You have to connect your SQL Server database, OLAP database, using SQL Server Management Studio, just like connecting to the relational databases. Now to write an MDX query, you have to select the database, and you can select the new query option, or you can right click on the database, and if you go to the new query, you have multiple options, and MDX is the one which we are interested in. So when you select MDX, it opens a connection. It sets the connection to the OLAP database, and it opens a query window where you can write your MDX queries to return the data. So let's start with the simplest query. So the simplest format, the format or the way that you need to go for your MDX queries is a select statement from cube. So you need to have these three minimum to get the data. So let's say I drag the cube name. So if I execute it, it returns some value. So there is no meaning for this value. There is no heading for this. There is no row item for this. So it is returning some value. I have not specified anything, any columns or any rows, but it is returning some value. This is nothing but the default measure of the cube wide world importers. So every cube there will be a default measure, and that measure value is this. Now let me get a different value. How can I get that, and what are the different axes, what is axis, and so on. We will be discussing all those things. Before that, let me quickly open Visual Studio just to show you the default value property of analysis services cube. While it opens, so if you're familiar with SQL queries, it's a two-dimensional. It will have rows and columns, but in OLAP you will have axes. It will not have any rows, or it will not have any columns. It will have axes, like axis 1, axis 2, axis 3, axis 4, and so on. When you say axis, as I mentioned, it is a multi-dimensional, right? This is one axis, this is one axis, this is one axis. So when it is multi-dimensional cube, so you will have multiple axes. You have to mention what needs to be shown on what axis. It all deals with axes, nothing about rows and columns. So what axis we have? We have axis of 0 and axis of 1, axis of 2, and so on. Okay, so when you say axis here, axis of 0, we also call it as columns. So whatever you want to show on columns, that will be in axis of 0, and axis of 1 is your rows. Axis of 2 may be pages, maybe indexes. So even though analysis services is capable of displaying the data in multi-dimensional way, our two-dimensional monitors can't show the data in more than 2 dimensions. So our MDX queries are restricted only to 2 axes. One is columns and another one is rows. So let's see how to add these axes. Select on axis of 0, which means I want to show something on axis of 0. What is that something? Let's say a measure. I want to show a measure called profit. So I dragged and dropped it, and I'm executing this query. And the query meaning is I want to show profit on axis 0. Axis 0 is nothing but columns. So if I execute it, it gives me profit information on axis 0. If you see on the columns, it is giving me profit information. Now, what will be when I specify axis 1, it will be on columns. Sorry, it will be on rows. So axis 0 is columns and axis 1 is rows. Where and how I can specify the axis 1? So I need to separate it. I mean, this ends here, and I need to go for whatever I want to show in axis of 1. For example, if I want to show city, I can drag and drop the city, and I have to name this axis of 1 from the cube name. So if I execute it, it shows me, it returns the data of profit on axis of 0, which means the columns, and it shows the city information on axis of 1, which is rows in this case. So the same query can be written like this. So instead of axis of 0 and axis of 1, you can call it as columns and rows. So both the queries are one and the same. If I execute it, it's going to return the same result, like the one that I have executed. So axis of 0 or columns, both are one and the same. Axis of 1 or rows, both are one and the same. Similarly, if you're too lazy like me, then you can go for 0 and 1 instead of axis of 0 and axis of 1. So all the three queries what you are seeing on the screen are one and the same. So it returns profit on your columns and city on your rows. Now, can we dice this data? Can I show city on the columns and profit on the rows? Let's give it a try. So to do the same, you just need to change the axis of it. So profit will be on your 1, which means your rows, and city on your columns. So if I execute it, it is returning some data and it is taking time. It's going to not responding mode. Very nice. Okay, if you see where we have profit on our rows. That is what I mentioned in the query. So select measures.profit on 1, which means rows, and city.city.city, which means show me city on the columns. So this is how you can write a simple MDX query. Now, before going to the complex MDX queries and the functions, let's see, or let's try to understand few terms. So when I say terms, we need to understand what is hierarchy, what is member, what is level, what is set, what is tuple, and so on. I hope now you understood what is axis. Axis is nothing but on which axis you want to see a particular data. In this example that we have discussed, we have used only 2 axes because our monitors are 2-dimensional, and you cannot see multi-dimensional data in your current systems. Now, if I drag anything here, for example, users as 2, and let me get city. So when I drag this is nothing but my dimension. So city is my dimension. A dimension will have multiple hierarchies. Okay, you know this is, I mean, even I know this is an attributes. We term this as attributes, but I'll explain you why we call it as hierarchies here in the MDX. So a city has, let's say, around 10 to 12 hierarchies. So if I drag up to the city, this gives me my hierarchy. So if you see the hierarchy here, it is nothing but dimension dot attribute name, right? Here it is just dimension name. And if you see a dimension, a cube will have multiple dimensions, and a dimension will have one or more attributes or hierarchies. And if you go to the next one under the hierarchies, this is what we call level. So these terms are very, 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 very important. If you don't know these terms, then you cannot write MDX queries. I mean, at least you will face difficulty in writing MDX queries. So concentrate. So city.city.city, what it's saying is it's the level. So level will have dimension name dot attribute name dot level name. So the level name is nothing but the third one, the city, and this is the hierarchy or what we call attribute name, and this is the dimension name. So why I am calling it as hierarchy instead of attribute? So attribute also a hierarchy. We call it as attribute hierarchy. So the reason is, if you remember the hierarchy is nothing but a collection of attributes which forms different levels, which forms levels, and the data will be hierarchical in nature. Let's say this is your year, and this is your semester, this is your quarter, and this is your month. So how many levels are there in your hierarchy? As a whole, this is a hierarchy. This has level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. So the data is hierarchical in nature, and each level, nothing but an attribute, but we created a hierarchy, so we call it as a level. So each level is the is hierarchical in the I mean, each level data is hierarchical in the hierarchy. Now, if you take an attribute hierarchy, remember this is the user defined hierarchy, like we created calendar year to calendar semester to calendar quarter to calendar month. Let's take an attribute hierarchy now. What you will have in attribute hierarchy? How many levels you will have? You will have default 2 levels unless you go and change the property aggregate attribute hierarchy to false. So the default 2 levels are, the first level is all, and the second level is members in it. Okay, so that is the reason we call even an attribute as a hierarchy. Attribute is also a hierarchy with the default 2 levels. One is all level, which is the roll up of all the members in it. So the members is the least level, and roll up of this is the all, this is the highest level. So this is the attribute hierarchy with 2 levels. This is natural hierarchy with 4 levels. So that is the reason we term everything as a level in the MDX. So it can be attribute hierarchy level or general natural hierarchy level. So when I say attribute hierarchy level, this is the attribute, and this is the this is the attribute hierarchy, this part, and this is the level of it. So when I say attribute hierarchy level, that means this or this or this, any attribute that is. And when I say natural hierarchy level, it may be something we created. We have not created any hierarchies, so bad. I don't see any hierarchies here, neither here. So there is no user defined hierarchies. So I'll create some hierarchies for our training purpose. So there are two types of hierarchies, hierarchy levels. One is attribute hierarchy level and another one is natural hierarchy level. Natural hierarchy level will be having multiple levels like this, whereas attribute hierarchy level will be having default two levels. One is all and another one is members of it. Now let's quickly see what it returns when I use dimension in my query and when I use attribute in my query and when I use level in my query. Let's quickly, before that, I would like to go ahead and create a hierarchy in the date. Let me go here to the dimensions, and also this users, I don't need to maintain one more attribute. I can use this user ID and rename it to user, and I have a key and name column option. Instead of name, blank name column, I can give username so that it will show the username here. Okay, and let me quickly create a hierarchy here. Before that, let me see what kind of data that I have. That is very important, seeing the data. If you see month is Jan, so I need to add an year here and the calendar month label. Okay, and the calendar year label, physical, what else we have? I don't have anything, only a couple of things. Okay, let me create this calendar year and the calendar month label, two levels, and let's say date, three levels of the hierarchy, and my attribute relationships. This will roll up into this. That's it. So now let me quickly deploy this cube. And process it too. So the deployment is succeeded for the cube. Let me quickly process it too. I forgot to process. I selected deploy, so it just deployed. And once processed, I have to refresh the database to see the new hierarchies that I've created. And also, meanwhile, while it's processing, oops, I cannot show you that now. Let's wait for it to get complete. Okay, it's almost done. So now, when I execute select from cube name, it has shown some default value, right? And if you see, default measure, there is nothing, so it takes the whatever the first measure that is there, that it will take it. Or else you can specify a default measure. What is the default measure for the cube? And if you set to profit, so next time onwards when you deploy it, this cube, and process it, and if you execute select from cube name, it will show the profit value by default. Okay, now let's quickly refresh and let's see whether we have the hierarchy created or no. Am I on the right database? Let me quickly see why the hierarchy is not showing for me. Okay, to which database, to which server it deployed? Let me go for a new query. Okay, don't see it. I might be deployed to the wrong server or maybe the wrong database. Let me quickly see what properties I have here. This is the server name, and this is the database name. And while word importers, let's see if I have something in the perspectives. Go to perspectives, and I should be able to see the hierarchy here. invoice. So the hierarchies, yeah, the perspective, the delivered date and all, it's not showing, but the default one should be showing that. We have a default, wildboard importers is the default, and it should show the hierarchy, or am I missing it? Date dot calendar. Can you see hierarchy here? No. Let me quickly check some places where it could be wrong. Okay, this is true. Everything looks perfect. Let me deploy it again. It is deploying to the right one. Okay. This is weird. And process full. What the heck is this? This is why I call myself as an idiot. I was querying the wide world importers new, and that's the mistake I was doing, and I was looking for that that attribute or whatever. So let me go to wide world importers. Now it should be here without doubt. You see the hierarchy is created. I was browsing the wrong one, my bad. So I was like a stupid. Okay, now let's go here and let's see what will happen when I give only the dimension name and when I give only the attribute hierarchy, or when I give the level. So I'll go with city. If I select city, and let's say I'll first let me execute this query to show you that it is all working good in wildboard importers data warehouse. This is the query I'll go with, and instead of hierarchy name or level name, I've given only the dimension name. So what will be the result now? I'm calling the dimension, the whole dimension on my rows, and the profit on my columns. Will it return all the attributes or one attribute? What will be the result? The result is an error. So the city dimension contains more than one hierarchy. So it is saying that the city dimension, if you see the city dimension, it has more than one. So when there is more than one, you have to explicitly specify what attribute hierarchy it is. If you go to the users here, it has only one hierarchy. So in this case, instead of city, let's say I'm giving only the users. I'm calling the users. So now in this case, it will go and get the hierarchy, the username hierarchy. The reason is there is only one hierarchy. So as you know, dimension is collection of attribute hierarchies. If there are more than one, then you need to explicitly specify the hierarchy that you are interested in. So the first thing, now you know users you can call because it's single hierarchy. How you have to call when it is a city dimension which has more than one attribute hierarchies? We tried with the dimension, it failed. Now let's try with the hierarchy. So I'm trying city. City.city. This is nothing but hierarchy, attribute hierarchy here. So if I execute it, what it will return? It will return the members of it. So this is at a hierarchy of an attribute, and the members of it is only all. So under hierarchy, it's only all. If you want to know what it is going to return, if you expand this, you have members here, whatever the members that this city that this city at the attribute hierarchy level is having. And if you expand this, you see only all. So this is what it is returning here. So when you go for hierarchy level, then it returns only all. Now let's try with the level. What will return if you pass level here? So instead of city, I'm passing level. So it will give you all the members in the level. If I expand this, it has members in it. So the same thing should be written in your result set. So if I execute it at the level, then it is giving you all the members of it. So by default, it gives you the members of it. So Here the city has only all member and the city level has all the members of it. This is the first level of the hierarchy, and this is the second level of the hierarchy. So which is having members of it. Now, you are getting a lot of nulls. How can I eliminate nulls? Let's filter nulls. There is a keyword called, which is the most frequently used keyword in your MDX queries, the non-empty. Show me only non-empty data. I don't care whether if the profit is null. I don't want to show it in the report. So show me only the non-empty data. So how can you do that? You can use the keyword called non-empty before the level that you have provided in the rows, or even you can do it in the columns. So if I execute it here, this gives me only the cities that has some data. Okay, so this is about the level, sorry, the dimension and the attribute hierarchy and the attribute hierarchy level. And now let's quickly switch these two. Now if you see here, it is on the column. I mean the profit is on the rows and the city is on the columns. And we have seen this result before, right? And in the result set, it will be profit on the rows and city will be on the columns. So here if I apply non-empty on columns, even that works. So in this case, I apply non-empty on the rows. One means rows. Here I'm going to apply non-empty on the columns. So don't show me anything that is null. If I execute it, it gives me cities which has some profit, but not null values. Anything but null. Or you can use non-empty keyword in both rows as well as columns, which gives you the filtered data for like profit, which has, I mean, city wise profit where it is not null. So this is how you can use the non-empty keyword and how you can filter the blank values that is coming from the result set. And if you see, the performance will be a little better if you use non-empty and filtering out all the waste records. And it took like 1 second for this. And let me execute the same one without non-empty. It may take at least a second or two more. You see, it has taken 3 seconds. It took, the reason is it is returning 23,274 rows, whereas the other one, after filtering, it is returning very less number of cities compared to the other one. So it has only 656 cities which has some valid profits. So that is why non-empty keyword improves the performance depending on the requirement that you are working on. Now we have seen, forget about this at the dimension level. We're not going to get anything in written because the city has multiple attributes. Now when I execute at the attribute hierarchy level, it gives me all member, right? Whatever the children of that attribute hierarchy, it returns the data. Can you explicitly call this all member? You can call this just by dragging and dropping this one here. Instead of dimension.hierarchy name, if you give dimension.hierarchy name dot all member name, it can be all by default, or it can be something else if you change the property that we have already discussed in our analysis services classes. So if you go to the dimension, if you go to the properties of the dimension, all member name, you see by default it is blank, so it is blank. And if you give some name here, this all will become that particular name. Okay, so by dragging that or by giving the all member name, you can explicitly call the all member of any particular attribute hierarchy. Now how can you show the sales? I mean, how can you select a particular member value now? Instead of showing all the city values, I want to show the data of Abbotsburg only. So in that case, you need to specify the or you need to drag and drop the city name here. So this is what I'm interested in. Just drag and drop it. And if you see the way it forms, the dimension dot attribute hierarchy dot ampersand the name of the level. Sorry, the member of the level. And if you see, the ampersand plays a major role here. When you say ampersand, it is getting you the key column of it. So this is the key column of it. And when you don't have that ampersand, then that means it is the name column of it. The best example for us is users. I created only one dimension, one attribute hierarchy where there are users, and I have a user ID and user name in the properties defined. For example, let me show you that so that you can easily understand. If you go to the users, if you go to the attribute property, and if you go to the key column, it is user ID, whereas the name column is username. So when I drag and drop a particular member from here, then by default, it takes the key column and it will have that ampersand. You see, it is giving you ampersand 1. So this ampersand 1 is nothing but the desktop OQ something, whatever you are seeing here. So this is how you can use an attribute hierarchy member, either by using the key column or by using the name column. If you are using the key column, then you have to go for this users.user.1. And if you are going by the name column, ampersand 1. And if you're going by name column, you don't need to give this ampersand. And in the name column, you have to give whatever the name column that is here, desktop, blah, blah, blah. So then it will be one and the same. And in some cases, you will have multiple, like year.month. In that case, it will be like this. 2006, when you have two key columns, it will be, let's say, 12. I think it's ampersand or something. I'll drag one example and show you. So it will be having both the values to match the right member. So how to call a particular attribute, a particular member, by using the key column value or the name column value. For this particular city, the key city attribute, the key column as well as the name column is same. So even if I remove it or if I keep it, it's gonna be the same result set. The only reason is the key column and the name column are same. If they are different, then you have to work accordingly. You have to give the query accordingly. If you use ampersand, you have to give the name column value for that. So this is how you can call a single member or filter a single member. Now, can you mingle two members, or can you show me all the members? You know how to show all the members. This gives you all the members data, right? City.city.city, which gives you all the members. And let me filter by non-empty because I don't want to see the blanks. And here, if you see, it's giving me 656 records or 655 cities, which has the value. Now, if I want to show this to the user as well as all the grand total of it, which means the all of it, then how can I do that? In that case, I have to use, or I have to cross join. Oops, it's not cross join, it's a union. I have to union both city output, which give city level output, to city hierarchy output. So now I have two things. From here to here it's 1, and from here to here it's 1. Both are separated by comma. And if I execute this query, you can see the total records is increased by 1, and it's giving me all the members of this level, and also all member of this level, or the member of this hierarchy. If you go here, the all is showing you at the bottom. If you want to show it at the top, you just switch these two positions and comma, and if I execute it here, this gives me all information. So this is about using a particular member and using the all member and so on. Okay, now we will see about the members. Before we discuss about the members keyword or members function .members, so if you observe something, every dimension has attribute hierarchies, and the attribute hierarchy will have the same hierarchy name and the level name. And even if you see in this example, the hierarchy name and the level name are one and the same. So this happens for all the attributes. You cannot have a different name for that. But when you go to a user defined hierarchy, for example, deliver date. So if you see, this is the dimension name. Oh, sorry, this is the dimension name. This is the hierarchy name, and the level name is different than hierarchy name. This level name is different than hierarchy name. This level name is different than hierarchy name. So remember, for attribute hierarchies, the level name and the hierarchy name will be the same. This is a blind mark to find out whether it's an attribute hierarchy or a user defined hierarchy. Most of the cases, they'll give a different hierarchy name and different member names here, like calendar year hierarchy. Calendar hierarchy, and the levels will be calendar year, calendar month, and date. Or physical hierarchy, then the physical year, physical month, and physical date. But in the case of attributes, it will be the same name for the hierarchy and the level name. Just a blind mark to remember. Now, let's go back to this query. And let me erase the drawings. And now this is returning me all information. Do I have any shortcut for this? Let's see the dot members function. So instead of the whole query, I'm taking only the first part of it. So which is the attribute hierarchy level. Attribute hierarchy. If I execute it, this is giving me all member level. So if I select dot members, the function members. So what it will return? It will return all the members of it, which means the all member as well as members in it. So the hierarchy has all as well as members of it, right? Now, if I go to the city, you might be assuming that this all will be returned when I go for members, but it has members in it. So it returns the whole hierarchy, starting from all to all the members. This is how you can return all member as well as the members of it in one simple query. If you go for the same member function at level instead of hierarchy, this is level, right? Dot members, this return all the members of that level. So the members of the level will not contain the all. That is why you won't get all and you will get rest of the data. So this is the difference between using the member function at the attribute hierarchy level and attribute hierarchy member level. So now let's see, let's try to use, let's try to get the members at a member level. So if you see here, a hierarchy has members, a level has members, right? Now let's try it on a user defined hierarchy, how it returns the data, what kind of data it returns. So what I'm trying to do here is, instead of using the city, which is city.city.city, which is an attribute hierarchy, attribute hierarchy, I'm going to the date and I'm going to the hierarchy. I'm trying to get this hierarchy here and I'm executing members of it. So what it will return? Will it return all member, or if you see here, will it return all member, or will it return all member plus calendar year, or it will return all the three levels or everything from this hierarchy? What will be the output of this particular query? So I'm trying to give invoice date dot hierarchy. This is the user defined hierarchy that I've created dot member, which means I want to know the members of the hierarchy. If I execute it, if you see, it is giving all on top, and 2013, this is the total sales, and April, this is the sales, and it is break up into days, the last level of the hierarchy, and it will go for 30 days. And then you have August here, August 1 to 30 or 31, whatever it is. So it gives all levels of it, all levels in the same hierarchical order. If you expand this all, it gives you the years, and if you expand this, it gives you this months. And if you expand this, it gives you the dates. So it will return everything when you have dot members on the hierarchy level. So this is a beautiful report if you want to generate like all on the top and year wise total and month wise total, and this is day wise total, right? So this is the advantage of the function members. The member function is very useful when you are generating in a hierarchical report like this. Now let's see how I can go for one single member of a particular hierarchy, or let's say attribute hierarchy. So I copied the same query and I'm taking out everything from here. And if let's say for example I want to see which year data, for example 2014 data. If I drag and drop a member, it takes this is the key column and the value is 2014. If I execute it, this gives me 2014 data. How if I want to see 2014 and 2015 data? In that case, I have to show or I have to give two members as the input in the query. So to give the two members of the same hierarchy, you need to drag and drop the other one too. Okay. If you execute it, this gives you 2014 data as well as 2015 data. And if you observe it here, the hierarchy of the first member is same as the hierarchy of the second member. So when the hierarchies of two members that you are specifying are same, two or more, then we call it as a set. A set is nothing but the collection of attribute members of same hierarchy. So that same hierarchy is key. It's a very important to mention. If you drag two different hierarchies, then it's gonna fail. And the sets are denominated, or what you call. It is represented with a flower brackets. So any members that you add between these two and those belongs to the same hierarchy, then we call it as a set. In short, a set is a collection of attribute members of same hierarchy. Now, I've shown you like 2013 and 2014 data. Let me do something. Instead of this, I want to see 2014 and I want to see city information about birth. Okay. Now, I have two different members from two different hierarchies. One is from invoice date.calendar year and another one is from city.city. What will be the output? If I execute it, this is going to fail, saying that members, tuples or sets must use the same hierarchies in the function. So what it is saying is, when I have the flower brackets, then it is trying to treat it as a set, and the set should have the members of the same hierarchy. But here if you see, these two are two different hierarchies. When you have data, when you have members from the different hierarchies, we call it as tuple. T-U-P-L-E. Few people call it as tuple, few people call it as tuple. So it's your convenience. So a tuple is the one where the hierarchies are different. The members of the hierarchies are different. Whereas the set, members of the hierarchies are same within the set. Now, you know how to represent this set. It's with the flower brackets. Now, how to represent a tuple? It's with the round ones. So now, when analysis server sees this, then it decides, okay, this is a tuple and the hierarchies should be different. Now, if I execute it, this cross joins and this gives you the information of 2014 to Abbotsburg combination. What is the profit? Okay, so this is the profit of 2014 year and the city is Abbotsburg. Now, this is a tuple. Now, let me do something. In the tuple, instead of this, let me try to give 2015. So now in the tuple, by definition, it should be the members of the different hierarchies. Now here I have given the same hierarchy, and if I execute it, then it's not returning anything here. It is trying to cross join 2014 to 2015. Give me data where, I mean, by cross joining 2014 to 2015, which means it's an impossible tense. It won't return any result. That is why it is. And this is an invalid or junk tuple, we call it as. Okay. So to get the data, here this is union. When you say when you say set, it is union. It will give you the data one by one. When you say tuple, it is cross join. Remember that it will be cross joining it. What is wrong here? Oops, I'm pulling it from the wrong one. Calendar year, invoice date dot calendar year dot 2015, and let me execute it, and it's gonna give you the data 2014 and 2015. And as I mentioned, set means it unions the data 2014 union 2015 data. And let me give tuple for this now. It is gonna fail. So the calendar here hierarchy appears more than once in the tuple. That means the same hierarchy should not be repeated in the tuple. That is why it is failing. So now you understand what is the member and what is how can you call or how can you show two member data from a same hierarchy with the concept of set, and from the different hierarchy with the concept of tuple. And tuple is the cross join, whereas set is the union of in the result set. Okay, now let's see whether we can create tuples and sets on measures. Let me take the same example. Okay, and set means same hierarchy, right? So to create a set at the hierarchy levels, remember all the measures, including the calculated measures, will be having the same hierarchy called measures. So all the measures will form tuple, set for you. For example, I have profit here and I created a set. In the set, I'm giving quantity. If I drag and drop it, you see it's a measure hierarchy. It's the same hierarchy for all the measures. Let me drag, say, tax amount. Oops. And I have three measures added. Now if I execute it, this forms a set. Oops, something is wrong. This should be a set. I have given round brackets, which is wrong. So now this union 2014 and 2015 data is returning for profit, quantity, as well as tax amount. So this is a set created on the rows as well as columns. In columns, I used all the measures. And now when I try to create a tuple using the measures, it's gonna fail, saying that same hierarchy is used more than once in the tuple. So in tuple, make sure the same hierarchy should not be repeated. So how can I create a tuple in using measures? You can create a tuple, but not using another measure, but by using any other attribute or any other hierarchy. Let's say, for example, if I drag and drop city here. So this gives me city-wise profit, like for every city profit, and for the year of 2014 and 2015. So you have to understand the query like this. So this is a tuple, so it is going to give me city-wise profit on columns, and this is for the year 2014 and 2015. Because this is a set, it is going to union these two data. And if I execute it now, you see 2014 and 15 on the rows and all the city-wise profit on the columns. It will definitely have a lot of rows. Okay, sorry, lot of columns. If you see 2014 about Ahrensburg, profit is null and null. Similarly, for this one, null and null. So this is how you can see, you can create a tuple using the measures on the columns. Now I see a lot of nulls. Why I need to keep it? I can simply ignore it, or I can simply remove it from my query. And now you see it's looking more better and beautiful. So for every city which has profit, this is the year-wise breakup. Or you can have one more year here. Where is your invoice date? And 2016, and this gives you all the 3 years data for all the cities in the columns. So here I've not recorded this part when I explained this, so let me quickly give you a brief about it for your future reference. So I created a tuple with set of measures and one city hierarchy, and if you execute it here, this gives you city wise profit, quantity, and tax amount. If you see, for every city it repeats the profit, quantity, and tax amount. The breakup will be that the tuple is formed by two hierarchies. One is the city hierarchy and another one is the measure hierarchy, and in measure hierarchy I created a set. So in short, if you have a parenthesis like this, then it is a set, and members hierarchy should be the same in that one. In tuple, members hierarchy should be different. Then you can ask like, oh, I have the same member hierarchies, then how can you call it as tuple? The reason is I created a set around this. So this set will be treated, set means it's the same hierarchy. That means these are one, and the other one will be treated as another one. And one of you guys asked the question like, can I hide this? Like, not for this case, but I think when we have only profit here, okay. So you asked me like, can I hide this profit? Actually, you cannot hide this profit, but you have a workaround. But that works only for the default measure. Now, instead of specifying the measure here, okay, I showed you, I set the default measure, right? Default measure to profit. Let me show you again. I know you guys might have forgot. If you go to the properties of it, and on top you see the default measure is set to profit. So when the default measure is set, you don't need to specify the measure, and it will be default taken the measure. And if you see, you are seeing the same data about bird, but no profit column, but you are seeing those two values. Now let me execute the same query with measures just to compare. And this is my first result, and this is my second result. You see the data is coming the same, but there is no profit column in the second query because I am depending on the default measure. And how can I get a different measure which is not profit? So in that case, we have a workaround. So this is for default measure. For profit, you don't need to specify. It will be all good. But what if you want to show a similar way for another measure? So in that case, the workaround is, let's say for example, tax rate you want to show, but you don't want to show the tax rate column next to every city. Then use it in the where class. Then this will give you the tax amount instead of the where I'm specifying. Give me this measure information. When I specify it in where, this is little tricky compared to the analysis, compared to the SQL. So this is giving a hint to the analysis services. Instead of giving the default measure, give me tax rate. This is how you can avoid showing the tax amount or whatever the measure that you have in the tuple in your columns. So far we discussed about the attributes and all, right? So let's see the same with hierarchies, user-defined hierarchies. Instead of 2015, from an attribute hierarchy, remember this is very important. The difference between attribute hierarchy, the major difference between attribute hierarchy and user-defined hierarchy. This is where the hierarchy power comes into picture. Okay, so instead of the hierarchy, instead of attribute hierarchy, I'm dragging this 2014 from the hierarchy and 2015 from the hierarchy. So what it will return? The same result as before or something new? So the result is same like before. Then what is the power of hierarchies? What is the advantage of hierarchies? So if you remember here, if you see here, if you observe, the hierarchy is same. 2004 invoice date dot hierarchy, invoice date dot hierarchy. Under that, the level is calendar year here, and the member is 2015. So what you can do is you can go for calendar month also. Let's say 2015 July, and if I execute it, this gives me 2014 data, 2015 data, and July 2015 data. So the split, if you see, I can have the year, quarter, month, whatever I have in the hierarchy uh, in a set. The reason is until the hierarchy is the same for every level of it, right? And if you try to create the same using the hierarchy, using the attribute hierarchies, what's going to be the problem? Let's say I'm trying to recreate the same using the attribute hierarchies. Okay, these two will fall into one set, and the next moment when I add what is that, calendar month, right? What is that calendar month label? When I add that July 2015, oops, and when I execute it, this says that the set should have the same members, because same hierarchies, because the year is of different hierarchy compared to the month. So when you have data like this, what it will become? It will become a tuple. So what I have to do is make the set of all the members and make a tuple of the distinct, different hierarchy members. Now when it becomes a tuple, it does the cross join. You see the difference? It is trying to cross join 2014 wise, 2015 July data. It tries to get that. There is no result set because 2014 July 2015 will not be available, and 2015 July 2015 is available, and it is returning the data. So you see the difference, and you can understand the power of the uh, power of having hierarchies. Here you can union everything. You can see all the data one by one in the form of a row. Whereas here it tries to cross join, like the second query output. It tries to look for 2014 to 2015 July combination of data. It's impossible because the hierarchy says that 2015 July will be in 2015 year. So no data return. And second combination 2015 to July 2015. There is a row record and these are the values of it. Nothing but the same values here. So this is how you can make use of the hierarchies, hierarchy levels to create a set to show the data in the row level. Year-wise breakup and month-wise breakup in the same result set. So this is about the hierarchies, and we will see a lot about different functions in the next session. Thank you for joining today, and have a great day, guys.